Okay, we have about a 2-minute warning before we begin America Free Radio. We'll let all of our affiliates load up here. Just about got them all. Okay, I think I have everyone connected. This is good. Good, everything's coming together. So we have about a minute and a half. Relax, we'll let the notifications go out. This is America Free Radio with Brooks Agnew. Show the video in just a moment. Okay, about 1 minute left. As you can see, we are going to stream tonight not only on Truth Frequency Radio Network, which is where the Truth Freaks hang out. We're not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. We are also going to stream live on Foxhole, Twitch, Facebook, DLive, Twitter, YouTube, Odyssey, and yes, tonight we have added Rumble. We are expanding the platform in order to reach more people because time is running out. You have supported the program, so I am going to support you. Call the studio here in about 30 seconds. So hang in there. Good to have you out there. We have so much to go over tonight. And some information that'll be very useful to you to help keep you safe and healthy and free. All right, let's go ahead and call the studio. Be a little bit of useless news, but we'll get there.
Right.
If it smells like a Sherman, it is.
Exactly.
Right.
You have to confront it. Otherwise, you're going to get a call from the principal saying that your child has not been at school for 3 days. You got to face it. He's been spirit walked.
Now, Duncan, in your new book, Communication, the Best Spell, you talk about how you caught your own 14-year-old son seething in a shamanic soul grip.
Yes. I walked into his room and he was playing an MF Doom record. Oh.
Grabbed him by the ear and told him, "Don't bother to explain, young man. You were practicing Sather rune shamanism.
That stuff is
And I am
bad
taking
news.
away your moon phase ornaments and turning you over to the Dream Eater."
Look, I know personally that kind of harsh punishment does not work. I
That's
took
true.
away my son Charlie's selenite moon crystals, but then he started doing his rituals with the toilet paper tube and a little bit of tin
He
foil.
must have been channeling the head of a foolish gibbon.
So I sent him to military school.
Good for you.
Yeah, but there he became possessed by the trickster god Coyote, who makes boys want to kiss other boys.
Oh, Coyote is
very
very
sorry
swift.
to hear that.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
Yeah, hold on just 1 second. I gotta add the chat or we're gonna be lost. Be right back. Okay. Now we're going. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. And here the results are always positive. You might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. Just waiting for everything to finish hooking up. I think we should be okay. Okay, we should be all right. Sorry about that last minute thing. I guess I've been out of the saddle for about a week on Truth Frequency. Good to see the chat room is filling up and making sure that everything is streaming live. Yes, everything is connected except for Facebook. Facebook's still out there spinning. We'll see what happens. So a lot going on. Was traveling last week to the Disclosure Con conference where I was a speaker, and I had a good time with my friends out there, and I appreciate your patience. All right, let's get started because we have a lot to go over. And don't forget that you can chat on any one of these lines, and you can also chat on Foxhole, and I'm monitoring that as well. Thank you for the subscription out there. Our first story, I need to cover this because it's a setup for this entire night. And that is that, and I think you all have suspected this, that cash used to be king, but cash is quickly becoming the currency of crime. And so, to stop global crime, the Global Syndicate plans to end all cash. That's their plan, in order to better track and control the citizens of Earth. And they have been moving closer to this cashless society in recent years. Things like the internet and different swift methods of moving cash around. And, of course, the breakneck drive toward national indebtedness. We are in debt over, $32 trillion. The EU is in debt. China is in debt way more than we are. And it seems as though we have a lot of players sitting at the table. Everyone is in debt, to whom we have no idea. But it seems like if I owe you $20 and you owe me $20, that we could just cancel everything out and we'd be okay, right? No. That's not the way it works. We're both in debt. $20. That's the way it works. Now, we got a first-hand look at what happens when governments restrict access to cash. When India, this happened in India, plunged into a cash crisis after the country's government enacted a policy of demonetization, and this was in November of 2016. Now, it's bad enough that various countries are exploring ways to move toward cashlessness. At first, you think it's okay. I come from a generation where it's always good to have $100 in your pocket, right? It's always good to have cash because you can buy gas, or you can go to a movie, or you can go out to eat, and it's all anonymous. Nobody knows where you were. Nobody knows what you bought, and that's why it's become untenable for the Global Syndicate. Now, there's an economist whose name is Thorsten Polleit, and he compares it to the master ring in the J.R.R. Tolkien story called Lord of the Rings. Now, I know a lot of you have read Lord of the Rings. It's probably 45 million people have read that story. I read it when I was young. I remember a lot of parts of it. But, you know, Tolkien had a way of creating a society. He created Middle-earth. He created a language. He was there had been a movie made about it. He lived in kind of a, not a fantasy world, but a fiction world in which there were analogs of what we see in real life, right? And we tend to do that ourselves. We read stories, or we make up things, or we watch movies, and we can see similarities in those movies and those stories in real life, right? That's what inspires us. That's what moves us. That's what sometimes changes us if it's a good enough story. And human history, and as you know, if you've read any of my 11 books, or all 11 of my books, and the 12th, by the way, is in the works, you you know that human history can be viewed from many different angles. And one of them is to see it as a struggle. And it's easy to say between light and darkness or whatever, but really it's for power and domination, as a struggle for freedom and against oppression, and a struggle for good against evil, right? And I recently, in thinking about this, I thought, you know, is it really the billionaire that has the power? I mean, is that really the aspiration to make 1 million and then 5 and then 50, and at some point you have 100, and you think, oh wow, I'm really rich, and you look at McAfee, they just crushed him. He was worth 100 and something $million, so 500 million maybe. And then you become a billionaire. And when you become a billionaire, you're talking about $1,000 million. What begins to happen then is, obviously you don't have it all in cash. It's in holdings, right? It's in steamships and buildings. It's in stadiums and malls. It's in stuff. And all of that stuff is dynamic. All of that stuff has earning power and value. And the $1 billion becomes self-sustainable unless you risk it all and lose it all, which has happened. But most of the time, the billions become self-sustainable, and a billionaire becomes a multi-billionaire, and then so on and so forth. But is that really power? I mean, once you get all that money, is it then money? Does it mean anything to you? Now you want power. Well, I've thought about that for a long time. I was up in the forest, in my cabin that Doc Skinner set up for me, and I was sitting on the porch, having a cold one and a cigar, looking out over this sparkling lake in the sunset. And it came to me, power is not in the wealth. Power is in the scarcity. Power's in the scarcity. Without scarcity, there's no power. That's what they call inequality. That's what they call, the haves and the have-nots. So it's really not a struggle between good and evil. Now, is it? It is a struggle between not having to worry about where your next meal comes from, or what, where you're going to live, or where your kids are going to go to school. That's not the struggle. The struggle is keeping the rest of the world in that place, so that you have power. And you think to yourself, why? I mean, why do that? Why have socialists and socialism, and then people who live under socialism? Why have communism? Why have a ruler, a crown, a royal, and then you have serfs? Why have that? Well, the history of the West, from the age of the Greek polis, the state, down to the present day, resistance to this socialism, this stateism, is essentially the history of the fight for liberty against the encroachments of this global syndicate. I call it a global syndicate because it's easy for me to understand. It's easy for me to measure. It's easy for me to tell you about it. And it would seem human history does not follow predetermined laws of societal development, but ultimately depends on not bricks and mortar, not gold and silver, but ideas. Ideas drive human action, right? That's what really makes things go. And it is only when the historical struggle of these ideas is expunged from history, so that men cannot learn from it, that those ideas fall apart. We don't remember because the global syndicate erases it. We may have won a battle. We may have won a grand battle or two. And we may have made great sacrifices and built edifices and statues and monuments. And then the global syndicate comes along and just removes them. They just remove the monuments. They remove the lessons that we learned, the ideas that went back, ideas that were good. They remove them, and they erase the history. And ideas are good, if those who act upon them produce results that are beneficial for everyone and lead the actors to their desired goals. But at the same time, those ideas are ethically justifiable. They apply to everyone, anytime, anywhere, right? And they ensure that people who act upon them will not only survive, but they will thrive. They will prosper. Prosperity is a great word. On the other hand, history shows us that if the ideas lead to actions that do not benefit everyone, benefit a few, that do not cause actors to achieve their goals and their dreams, they're not ethical. Good ideas, for example, are people accepting mine and yours and entering into exchange relationships with one another, right? Private property, small business. This is mine. I created it. More than I can use, so I'm selling some to you so you can have it too. And ideas are coercion. They're not cooperation. They're deception. They're embezzlement. They're theft. And this is where capitalism kind of gets its bad name, because it starts out all well and good. You own this property, I own that property. You own this factory, I own that foundry, I own this ship, you own that train. And we do commerce together. And we settle to some kind of value proposition that benefits everyone. Everyone gets to stay. The railroad doesn't go out of business. The ships don't get in disrepair. The farms get seed and fertilizer and equipment and things that they need. Homes get built. People that work all those businesses get to prosper as well. That's capitalism. You own the labor of your hands. But evil ideas are very bad. Ideas through which whoever puts them into practice is consciously, purposefully harming others. And we see that happening right now in every community. Almost every major business is going through this right now, where the Global Syndicate is asserting its idea that it's a good thing if they pump your veins full of chemicals. And you don't. And you either take the chemicals or you don't eat. You take the chemicals or you don't work. You take the chemicals or you can't sit down at a restaurant. You can't buy a plane ticket. You can't own a car. You can't get a passport. Evil ideas are these types of physical attacks. They're murder. They're tyranny. And you have no representation in that government. So let me just compare this maybe the way J.R.R. Tolkien did. You know, he wrote a literary monument about the epic battle between good and evil. And in his fantasy novels that encompass a half a dozen works, they were published in 1954. Okay, I read them in the 70s. It was a worldwide success, not least because of the movie trilogy. I mean, 40 million people read the books before, there was ever a movie. And the movie was released from 2001 to 2003. And there's still some stories being made on cable. But what is Lord of the Rings really about? Let me break it into this. In the First Age, the deeply evil Sauron, the demon, the hideous horror, the necromancer, he had rings of power made by elves in the mountains. They were masters at working metal and putting magic into metal. And this is what the rings were. There were 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. There were 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. There were 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. But Sauron secretly forges one more ring, an additional ring into which he pours all his darkness, all his cruelty. And this one ring, the Master Ring, rules all the other rings. Now, these rings have power. These rings give leadership, unbelievable, almost a charm of favor, where everything goes their way. But when Sauron puts the Master Ring on his finger, he can read and control the minds of everyone who's wearing the other rings. Now, the elves, they see through the dark plan and hide their 3 rings. The 7 rings of the dwarves also fall or fail to subjugate their bearers. But the 9 rings, the ones given to the men, proved to be effective. Sauron enslaved 9 human kings who were to serve him. And then, in the Third Age, in the battle before Mount Doom, Isildur, the eldest son of King Elendil, severed Sauron's ring finger with a sword blow in a battle, and Sauron is defeated and loses his physical body, but yet he survives. Now, Isildur, he has the Ring of Power. He swiped it right off the finger, and it takes possession of him. He does not destroy the Master Ring when he has the opportunity, and it costs him his life. When Isildur is killed, the ring sinks to the bottom of a river, and it remains there for 2,500 years. I'm sorry, for 500 years. Uh-oh. What do you mean no audio? You can't hear anything? Oh, that's on YouTube. Well, what about it? No, looks like everyone else is got audio. Let's continue. Tell me in the chat room if you can't hear me, because I'm seeing all... Well, of course, now wait a minute. That's a good point, because... Well, let me see what I can do. Hold on one second, because that everything's good there. Okay, let me go to the advanced audio properties. Should be monitoring. Monitor and output. Yes, desktop audio. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Okay. So this should work. Hang on a second. Let me take the... There. I think, well, no, I can still hear a little echo, and I'm sure you do too. Okay. Is that what you hear? You hear echo as well? Okay. I'm working with the microphone here. This is what happens when OBS updates. There's a slight offset. Let me make sure. I'm going to slow this down about 15 milliseconds. Nope. Is that working? All right. We're getting through this. We'll speed it up just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Let's see if that fixes it. Ah, there we go. Thank you very much. See? Every time OBS updates, it changes the settings a little bit, and then you have to go back in and fix it. Okay. Looks and sounds good now. Thank you very much. So, the point about the rings is that they end up giving immense power to the holders of the rings, and the power ends up corrupting them. In the ring of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, you know, it's not just a piece of forged gold. It's not just something that sits on your finger. It embodies Sauron's evil. and it corrupts everyone who lays their hands on it. It poisons their soul, and it makes them willing helpers of evil. Now, nobody can wield the cruel power of the One Ring and use it for good. No human, no dwarf, no elf. Now, can an equivalent for Tolkien's literary portrait of evil be found in the here and now, in the modern times? Yes, it can. I believe so. And I'd like to describe this. Okay, the 19 rings represent the idea that the ring bearers should have power over others and they should rule over them, right? And we do see that when we elect someone to a school board, or we elect someone to a city council or a county commission, or God help us all, Congress. They are handed one of these rings and they feel as though they are now empowered to rule over us, right? When we speak of the rule of law, we're not really talking about the rule of law now, are we? We're talking about the rule by law, right? We're talking about a government that doesn't represent us. It doesn't govern us. It rules over us. But the One Ring of Power, it stands for the particularly evil idea of creating a state of states, a world government, a world state, the Global Syndicate, and the creation of a single world fiat currency controlled by the states would pave the way toward this outcome. That's the golden ring. That's the ring of power. No more individual currencies, one currency, and no cash. Everything's digital. Everything is controlled by the spirit and the will of the Global Syndicate. The state, the state. It's a social institution, right? It's forced by victory. Victory is a good word. Victory is a good word. It's forced by victory over men who exist in a defeated group, right? Victory over the defeated. And the sole purpose is to regulate the dominion of the victorious group over the vanquished group and securing itself against revolt from within and attacks from abroad. And you have seen that in this last week when Virtual Joe came out and said, "Oh, all you evil parents standing up to defend your children in our school board meetings, we're going to put the FBI on you. You are terrorists. You're evil, and you must be destroyed. You must be put in jail. You must be stripped of your wealth because we're going to sue you until you're broke." Isn't that what you heard? That's what I heard. That's exactly what I heard. The state is a machine in the hands of the ruling class to suppress the resistance of its class opponents, which is the middle class. Forget about the working poor. They're of no consequence. They can't buy anything. They don't own anything. They'll never own a home. They'll never buy a new car. They're not driving Detroit. No, they're not driving Teslas. They're not driving BMWs or brand new Nissans. No. They're buying used cars, the working poor. They don't buy new cars. They don't drive the economy. They scoop up the crumbs after the middle class is done with them. The modern state in the Western world no longer uses coercion. They don't use armies. They don't use violence, as many of the predecessors did. They don't have to. They don't have to, because they control the money. They control the money. Now, in about 1 minute, TFR is going to go on break. And I have to tell you, right now we are humoring YouTube. YouTube, as you know, is a part of Google. And Google regularly violates our civil rights. And we do not let YouTube host our live programming. We're doing that right now because we're kind of in this friendly zone. We're telling a story. But very soon, we're going to say goodbye to YouTube tonight. And you can see here at the bottom, there are a bunch of other free speech platforms that you can participate in. All right, hang on one second while we... Okay, TFR is now going on break. And so we hate to do it because we really like YouTube and our over 20,000 subscribers there and the notifications that go out. It was, at one time, a really great platform. But now it has been oppressive and suppressive and censoring. And so we don't let them host our live programming. We let you, the listeners, come in and enjoy and join us. And there are a whole bunch of you out there listening on YouTube, and I hate to do this, but we're probably going to have to say goodbye to YouTube because we're going to get into some areas that we think they might suppress. So when we come back from break, we will say goodbye to YouTube. So what I need you to do is go down to the links. They're right down here in the bottom. See, right here in the description. You've got them right there. You just click on any one of those magnificent free speech platforms, and you can stay with us for the next 2.5 hours. It'll be wonderful. You'll be enlightened. You'll be entertained. Maybe you'll be offended. That's what we're here to do. We're here to give you truth. It may go down a little tough, but we'll add a little sugar or some smooth-sounding voice and make it go down. So we will bring, let's see, where are we at with the break here? Oh, they still got 2 minutes left. So in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, I told you 9 men got rings, right? And they really liked wielding their power. And they were inescapably bound to Sauron's one ring of power because they just weren't magical beings at all. They were just guys. They were just guys that happened to be in the right place at the right time, and they became billionaires, okay? Let's say they became billionaires. Now, it's quite similar to the idea of the state, right? To seize, to maintain, and, of course, to always expand their power. The state seduces its followers to do what is necessary, to resort to all sorts of techniques. Propaganda, carrot and the stick, you know. Take a bunch of chemicals in your bloodstream that change you forever and your children and their children, just so that you can fly in an airplane or eat at a restaurant or vote. Who knows? Who knows where that's going, right? The 2022 election's coming up, and you may be banned from voting unless you pour these chemicals into your bloodstream. And why? Why? You have to ask yourself, why would they do that? Why is it so important for you to take these chemicals into your bloodstream? That's a great question. Great question. Bring TFR back in about 25 seconds. And why now? Why not a year from now? Why not 2 years from now? Why not wait and see? No. No. They want everyone to take the chemicals before Christmas. It's important because of climate change, because of the power. All right, let's go ahead and jump back in. Here we go. Truth Frequency Radio rejoins us now. A little bit of intro music. So the state lets people know through their media, the global media empire, that it's good. What they want to do is good. It's good for everybody. It's necessary. They resort to all kinds of techniques, to the propaganda, to even terror, even threats, even beat you up, even put you in jail. Now, most people succumb to this kind of propaganda. They don't want to be put in jail. They don't want to lose their property. They don't want to be sued. They don't want to be labeled. It's inevitable, right? Without it, the state whispers, a civilized coexistence of people would not be possible. Most people succumb, and they give in, and they give up. And the state gets carte blanche to effectively infiltrate all economic and societal matters. They go into kindergarten. They go into the schools. They go into the universities, into transportation, into media, health, pensions, law, security, money, and credit, the environment. And they gain power every single step they take. The state rewards its followers. Oh, yes, jobs and titles and business contracts and even payments. And those who resist, those who say, no, 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 I'd rather have my freedom. Yeah, they end up in prison. They lose their livelihood, even lose their lives. How many of my colleagues have they canceled this week on Twitter? How many of them have they taken their bank accounts away from them? Have they gone in and stolen their money and crushed their business? Many. Many. Just as last week, there was another purge. A whole lot of my friends lost their Twitter accounts, lost their bank accounts, and oh my God, everybody's lost their YouTube account. Which, by the way, right now, I think we're down to, about a dozen people left in YouTube. Okay, everybody's pretty much made the transition to the other free speech platforms. So we're going to say bye-bye, YouTube. And all you YouTubers, half dozen or a dozen or so that are left out there on YouTube, go ahead and transfer over to these other free speech platforms. And we'll be